Who is this? Arjavalka is replying, the self is pure consciousness, shines in the light within the heart, surrounded by the senses, only seeming to think, seeming to move. Self neither sleeps nor wakes nor dreams. When the self takes on a body, it seems to assume the body's frailties and limitations. But when it sheds the body, at the time of death, the self leaves all this behind. The human being has two states of consciousness, one in this world, the other in the next. But there is a third state between them, not unlike the world of dreams, in which we are aware of both worlds, with their sorrows and pain, joys. When a person dies, it is only the physical body that dies. That person lives on in a non-physical body, which carries the impressions of his past life. It is these impressions that determine his next life. In this intermediate state, he makes and dissolves impressions by light of the self. Makes and dissolves the impressions by the light of the self. In that third state of consciousness, there are no chariots, no horses drawing them, or roads on which to travel. But he makes up his own chariots, horses, and roads. In that state, there are no joys and pleasures, but he makes up his own joys and pleasures. In that state, there are no lotus ponds, lakes, or rivers, but he makes up his own lotus ponds, lakes, and rivers. So I'll read again. The human being has two states of consciousness, one in this world, the other in the next. But there's a third state between them, not unlike the world of dreams, in which we are aware of both worlds, with their sorrows and joys. When a person dies, it is only the physical body that dies. The person lives on in a non-physical body, which carries the impressions of his past life. It is these impressions that determine his next life. In this intermediate state, he makes and dissolves impressions by the light of the self. In that third state of consciousness, there are no chariots, no horses drawing them, no rivers, no lakes, but he makes up all that. No joys and pleasures, but he makes up all that. And it is he who makes up all these from the impressions of his past or waking life. It is said of those states of consciousness that in the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self, who never dreams, who is ever awake, watches by his own light the dreams woven out of past deeds and present desires. In the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self keeps the body alive with the vital force of prana and wanders wherever he wills. In the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self assumes many forms, eats with friends, indulges in sex, sees fearsome spectacles. But he is not affected by anything because he is detached and free. And after wandering here and there in the state of dreaming, enjoying pleasures and seeing good and evil, he returns to the state from which he began. But he is not affected by any of this because he is detached and free. And after wandering here and there in the state of dreaming, enjoying pleasures and seeing good and evil, he returns to the state from which he began. As a great fish swims between banks of a river as it likes, so does the shining self. The shining self moves between the states of dreaming and waking. The shining self moves between the states of dreaming and waking. As an eagle, wary after such soaring in the sky, folds its wings and lies down to rest in the nest, so does the shining self either enter the state of dreamless sleep, where one is freed from all desires. The self is free from desire, free from evil, free from fear. As the man in the arms of his beloved is not aware of what is without and what is within, so a person in union with the self is not aware of what is without and what is within. Or in fact, the unitive state, all desires find their perfect fulfillment. As a man in the arms of his beloved is not aware of what is without and what is within, so a person in union with self is not aware of what is without and what is within. For in that unitive state of all desires find their perfect fulfillment. There is no other desire that needs to be fulfilled, and one goes beyond all sorrow. No other desire to be fulfilled, and one goes beyond sorrow. In that unitive state, there is neither father nor mother, neither worlds nor gods, nor even scriptures. In that state, there is neither thief nor slayer, neither low caste nor high, neither monk nor ascetic. The self is beyond good and evil, beyond all the suffering of the human heart. In that unity state, one sees without seeing, for there is nothing separate from it, smells without smelling, for there is nothing separate from him, tastes without tasting, for there is nothing separate from him, speaks without speaking, for there is nothing separate from him, hears without hearing, for there is nothing separate from him, touches without touching, for there is nothing separate from him, thinks without thinking, for there is nothing separate from him, knows without knowing, for there is nothing separate from him. Where there is separateness, one sees another, smells another, tastes another, speaks to another, wears another, touches another, hears to another, thinks of another, knows another. But when there is unity, one without a second, that is the world of Brahma. That is the supreme goal of life, the supreme treasure, the supreme joy. Those who do not seek this supreme goal leave on but a fraction of this joy. Now Janaka says, I'll give you another 1,000 cows. Please teach me more of the way to self-realization. Yajnavalkya started. As a heavenly laden cart creaks as it moves along, the body groans under its burden when a person is about to die. When the body grows weak and old age or illness, the self prepares himself as a mango or fig or a banyan tree frees itself from the stalk and returns the way he came to begin another life. Just as when a king is expected to visit a village, the mayor and all other officials turn out to welcome him with food and drink. All creation awaits the person who sheds his body, having realized Brahman. Having realized Brahman. Here he comes, they say. Here comes Brahman himself. But the senses, while that man lies dying, gather around and mourn the self's departure, as courtiers mourn when the king is about to leave. When body and mind grow weak, the self gathers in all the powers of life and descends with them into the heart. As prana leaves the eye, it ceases to see. He is becoming one, say the wise, he does not see. He is becoming one, he no longer hears. He is becoming one, he no longer speaks, or tastes, or smells, or thinks, or knows. By the light of the heart, the self leaves the body by one of its gates, and then, by the light of the heart, the self leaves the body by one of its gates, and when he leaves, prana follows, and with it all the vital powers of the body. He who is dying merges in consciousness, and thus consciousness accompanies him when he departs, along with the impressions of all that he has done, experienced, and knows. As a caterpillar having come to the end of one blade of grass, draws itself and reaches out to the next blade of grass. So the self, having come to the end of one life and dispelled all ignorance, gathers in his faculties and reaches out from the old body to a new one. As a goldsmith fashions an old ornament into a new and more beautiful one, so the self, having reached the end of the last life and dispelled all ignorance, makes for himself a new and more beautiful shape, like that of the Devas or other celestial beings. The self is indeed Brahma, but through ignorance, people identify it with intellect, with mind, with senses, with passions, and the elements of earth, water, air, space, and fire. This is why the self is said to consist of this and that and appears to be everything. As a person acts, so he becomes in life. Those who do good become good. Those who do harm become bad. Good deeds make one pure. Bad deeds make one impure. You are what your deep driving desire is. You are nothing but what is your deep and driving desire is. As you desire is, so is your will. As your will is, so your deed. As your deed is, so your destiny. So finally, everything starts with desire and ends with destiny. As you desire, so your will. As you will, so your deeds. As your deeds, so your destiny. When we live in accordance with our deep driving desire. It is this desire at the time of death that determines what is our next life will be. We will come back to earth. We will come back to earth to work out the satisfaction of that desire. But not those who are free from desire. They are free because all their desires have found fulfillment in the self. They do not die like others, but realizing Brahman, they merge in Brahman. So it is said. When all the desires that surge in the heart are renounced, the mortal becomes immortal. When all the desires that surge in the heart are renounced, the mortal becomes immortal. When all the knots that strangle the heart are loosened, the mortal becomes immortal. Here is this very life. Here in this very life. In this very life, if all desires that surge in heart are renounced, the mortal becomes immortal. When all the knots that strangle the heart are loosened, the mortal becomes immortal. As the skin of a snake is sloughed onto the anthill, so does the mortal body fall. But the self, freed from the body, merges in Brahman, infinite life, eternal light. Now, Janaka, having heard this, said, I give you another 1,000 cows. Please teach me more of the way to self-realization. So, Yajnavalkya, those who realize the self enter into the peace that brings complete self-control and perfect patience. Those who realize the self enter into the peace that brings complete self-control and perfect patience. They see themselves in everyone and everyone in themselves. Evil cannot overcome them because they overcome all evil. Evil cannot overcome them because they overcome all evil. Sin cannot consume them because they consume all sin. Free from evil, free from sin and doubt, they live in the kingdom of Brahman. Your Majesty, this kingdom is yours. Janaka, Venerable One, I offer myself and my kingdom in your service. What is the thunder said? The children of Prajapati. This chapter is over. Janaka Yajnavalkya's discourse is completed. Now, in fact, we have a similar discourse between Janaka and Ashtavakra. Have you heard of Ashtavakra? Anybody heard of Ashtavakra? So, Ashtavakra was the
Guru of Janaka, sir. Eight body, eight bends.
Ashtavakra had 8 bends in his body. That is his name. Actually, Janaka, after this or before this maybe, because in this Yajnavalkya himself gave that complete Brahmajnana self-realization to Janaka. But before that possibly, or after this, I don't know. Yes, Ashtavakra Asana is also there. There are 8 bends in it. So Janaka gives out a notice that he will accept anyone as Guru if that person gives him self-realization, enlightenment within 2 seconds. The time taken between keeping one leg on the horse and also keeping the second leg, between first leg and second leg, that is about 2 seconds or 3 seconds. So and also he says that those who claim that they will give that enlightenment within those 2-3 seconds but fail to do that will be put in jail, and that too, that jail is underwater. So like that, hundreds of people come who try to become his guru by giving him enlightenment. They fail and they are sent to the jail. So Ashtavakra's father was also sent. So Ashtavakra comes after a long time, for many years, to Janaka and says, I will give you enlightenment, but first, before that, you give me my fees. He says, all right, whatever fees you want, I'll give you. Then Janaka says, okay, you give me everything which you have. So his kingdom, army, mother, money, yeah. I mean, each and everything which has the palace, the wealth, treasury, jewels, weapons, one by one he hands over legally. Then finally he asks, what is still left with you? He says, only my body is left, my clothes are left. Then he says, you surrender your body also to me. So he surrenders his body also to him. Then what else is left? Then he says, my mind is there, my intellect is there, and then my ego is there. So one by one, you surrender all that also. Prana is also. No sound. Who is having no sound? Others, everybody is able to hear?
Yes,
Can you
sir.
all hear?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So somebody's. So finally, he surrenders everything. He surrenders his self, his mind, his ego, mano, buddhi, ahankara, chitta, all everything is surrendered and handed over to Ashtavakra. So when everything is already delivered and given off, then Ashtavakra asks him, "You have given everything you have with you to me. Are you still there? Because your ego is gone, your mind is gone, your intellect is gone, your prana is gone, your body is gone, your properties are gone, everything, all attributes are gone." Then he says, yes, I am still there. And then Ashtavakra asks, who are you? You tell me now. That's all. That very question brought enlightenment in Ashtavakra, and that dialogue between them is a big book called Ashtavakra Samhita, which is the highest of Advaita texts. And whatever Yajnavalkya told in a very straightforward manner here, the same thing is being discussed in that book in a very deep and exhaustive manner. So first he says, Mokshamichhasi chettat vishayan vishavatyaja kshamarjavadaya tosha piyushavad. So when you give up everything, all attachments, then you are in yourself. Then the question arises, who are you? Yesterday also I discussed this question. Nobody can say, I don't exist. Like Janaka cannot say, I don't exist after giving up, after detaching himself from mind, body, intellect, and properties. That I-ness, who is that I? That I is nothing but pure consciousness, self. And what is that self? You cannot give any explanation or description, because whatever descriptions and explanations you give are about the mind. And that is just pure consciousness awareness. It is not mind. And so also you and me and he and everybody is the same self, which is pure consciousness without any attributes. Nirguna, nirvikara, nirakara, nirvikalpa, niranjana. So this much everybody agreed. Yesterday also I explained in my question answer session. So I exist and I am pure consciousness. Since I exist, I am Sat. Since I am pure consciousness, I am Chit. And the nature of myself is Ananda. My nature is Satchidananda. So also yours, and so also his, and so also each and every entity. Chimalo, Brahmalo, Shivakeshavadulalo, Prema Meri Undadi Rama. So Antaramayam is Jagamantaramam. So that self which is there in everything, it appears to be in many, many individual forms, but actually it has to be one and the same, because the qualitatively it is exactly the same. It is like the same water in different types of lakes and rivers. The water in Hussain Sagar and water in Gangotri are the same, except the contaminations are different. So similarly, the contaminations of mind, thoughts, and body and attachments and identification are all different. But if you remove those contaminations, if you distill, then what remains is just water. So also what remains is pure self. So, and all these individual multiple selves, which are in thousands and thousands and lakhs, will be proved, can be easily proved to be one and the same, though they appear to be different units, the instances or occurrences of the same self. But then there is a very simple matter here. I told you within 10 minutes you can understand this. Then within the next second you will be caught up again with your individuality, because you are caught up with your maya, with your mind, and with your emotions, with your attributes. So it is like a sun reflected in different bodies, water bodies, like a pot or a dish or a lake or a river. The sun's reflection is getting influenced by the body in which it is reflected. It's a muddy water or clear water or hot or whatever it is. But sun itself is not affected by this. So the reflection only is affected. That reflection is Jivatva, and the sun's original light is Brahman. So once you know that you are the light and not the contamination, then you are free from all suffering, you are liberated. So on the nature of the self, I think this Upanishad has come to an end. Only one small final epilogue is there, which I will tell at the end. Now, for today's discussion, I want to close. A lot of people have been having a lot of problems. We'll close today, but the main message is the nature of the self. Who am I? And to know that I am Brahman, that is liberation. To think that you are so and so and you are having so many problems and you are affected by conditioning. I'll tell you 4 sentences which are the summary of all philosophy. Those who are interested can note down. The first sentence is, yes, note down these 4 sentences. First sentence is, all experience of reality is the conditioning of the consciousness. Because if I ask, who am I, or what is this world which you see, what is that you see, it depends on your conditioning. You can see electrons, you can see protons, or you can see just trees and mountains, depend on what your conditioning is. And all experience of reality is a conditioning of the consciousness. So this is first sentence. The second sentence is, true nature of reality cannot be known or understood or experienced until unless all conditioning is eliminated. Third sentence is, true nature of the consciousness, who am I, also cannot be known or experienced unless and until all conditioning is eliminated. If and when, if at all conditioning is eliminated, the true nature of the reality and the true nature of the consciousness will merge into one, because there cannot be two. So these are the 4 sentences which I concluded out of my own meditation sessions, which are the summary of all philosophy. Everybody is telling the same thing. Conditioning in this 4 sentences, there is no Sanskrit word used. There is no God name used. But the word conditioning is interpreted as mind in Yoga Shastra, and is interpreted as Maya in Vedanta Shastra, and interpreted as Prakriti in Sankhya. And the consciousness is interpreted as self, and reality is interpreted as universe or Brahman. So all the Mahavakyas are aiming at this knowledge only, self-realization. See, if you talk of electrons, protons, all they are thoughts. If you talk of brain, neurons, they are also thoughts, because you made up all those things in your own thoughts. You are assuming they are all real because you are in the waking state and you assume so many things. But you are shuttling between waking state, dream state, deep sleep state, and in each state, the other state is a myth, like in Upanishad we have seen. In dream state, the waking state is a myth. In deep sleep state, waking and dream are myth. So what is truth is only the consciousness which is shuttling between the 3. None of the experiences in these states are the truth. That is what the Mandukya Upanishad says. The Turiya, the 4th, which is shuttling between the 3 and beyond the 3, which is yourself. And I am Atma Brahma. That Turiya, that is Brahma. Okay. Now I want to stop here with the final conclusion given in this Upanishad. The children of the creator gods, human beings, and asuras, the godless, lived with their father and students. When they had completed the allocated period, and God said, Venerable One, please teach us. Prajapati answered with one syllable, Da. Have you understood? Yeah. Yes, they said. You told us Damyata, the self-control. You have understood it, he said. Then the human beings approached. Venerable One, please teach us. Prajapati answered with one syllable again, Da. Have you understood? Yes. Yes, they said. You have told us Datta, to give, Data, to go on giving. You have understood, he said. Then the godless approached. Venerable One, please teach us. Prajapati answered the same syllable, da. Have you understood? He asked. Yes, they said. Told us, Dayadhvam, be compassionate. You have understood, he said. The heavenly voice of the thunder repeats this teaching. Da, da, da. Be self-controlled, give, and be compassionate. That's all. This Upanishad is over. Yau Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apa Shanti Roshadaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishwe Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shanti Reva Shanti Sama Shanti Redi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Now I'll open for the final question session of today's last day. No more sessions. Now you can ask whatever questions you have related to the subject of our discussion, either today or yesterday or in this subjects or in Upanishads. It has been a long journey. You have been very patient. I thank all of you to have been so patient. It's very difficult to understand this subject, but still very patiently they have been here. Now I told you about the nature of the self yesterday also and today also. And the nature of self as the only one, which is the only truth. And if you realize that, you are freed from all. Otherwise, what happens is that you are under the influence of the thoughts and emotions, starting with ego and bringing attachment, love, hatred, desire, anger, greed, and pride, jealousy, craze, all these negative emotions. And idle man's brain is devil's workshop. When people sit at home in Corona times, they don't know what to do. Their brain is working as a devil. So whatever appears to you to be true in that kind of condition of the brain is not necessarily true. You'll start finding faults with your family members. There'll be fights, or you'll find fault with Narendra Modi, or do all kinds of things. So whatever appears like that in the mind is not necessarily true or correct. Because the same thing at another time you will say that is the opposite of the stand you will take, and other person will also interpret opposite. So everything is based on interpretation, and interpretation is based on the state of mind, state of emotions. So the yoga is the process of calming the mind with self-control, with no emotions, no thoughts, but be in yourself. When you are in yourself, you are the self. And who is that self? That self is Brahman. I am Atma Brahma. This self is Brahman. And Tattvamasi, you are that. And Aham Brahmasmi, I am that. So to know that is the ultimate goal of Vedanta, of yoga. Yoga and Vedanta are complementary to each other. They go one with the other. Yoga is the practical process to achieve the experience of spiritual enlightenment. And what is that spiritual enlightenment? What knowledge is it? Jnana is explained in Vedanta. So without yoga, Vedanta is useless, and without yoga, Vedanta is useless. Without Vedanta, yoga is also useless. Just being practiced without getting knowledge. So both are required. Vedanta is required for all yoga practitioners, but the truths of the Vedanta have to be realized through self-own experience in the process of yoga. That is why yoga, Vedanta, they are both compulsory to get to the true knowledge and true enlightenment. Yes, can I open for any questions, sir? When physical body dies, how and where do the consciousness soul travel? Yeah, just now I explained to you. Ajnavalkya also explained. So when the physical body dies, there will be an intermediate stage before getting the next body. And that intermediate stage is called heaven or hell, depending on positive or negative conditioning. And next body will be acquired. And again, the story starts. The next body can be human body, can be animal body, can be plant body. Or if it is human body, it can be any human. It can be African, or it can be European, or it can be Indian, or it can be Brahmin, or it can be non-Brahmin, whatever, depending on the karma. So in between is a state which is temporary, which the temporariness can be short or long. Nobody can say. But the point is to not to get rebirth again. Janmarahityam is moksha. So moksha will be achieved by Brahma Jnana, Jnana Mukti. By realizing that you are Brahman, you are not affected by the doings of this world, and you are not going to have any desires. The main problem is the desires. If you die with desires unfulfilled, you will be definitely born to fulfill those desires. So first thing is to give up all desires in this life and act as per the requirements, as per your responsibilities and duties that call upon you, perfectly, successfully, with karma yoga, with dedication to divine. Then you will cross across this life. But during this life, if you can acquire Brahmajnana, then you will get liberated. Many thanks for sharing your valuable time. We had an excellent time. This is Balay Garu. Yes. Okay, then anybody else wants to make any comments or questions or discussions? I'm open for the next 5-10 minutes to close this series completely. Today is the last day.
There were two questions. Same with the matter from Vikas. Everything is electrons, protons, neutrons. They are energy vibrations.
That is in the physical world, in the waking state. But we are talking a much deeper level of truth. That which is in the three states, waking, dream, and in the waking state, only energy, which appears as matter also or energy also, E is equal to mc square. That is the truth. That is called Sat. So as I told you, the nature of the self is Satchidananda. Sat, Chit and Ananda. All the three, not only Sat. So what you described is only Sat, the physical existence outside in the waking state. But who is that observer who is observing that? That is the Chit. That is I. Myself, I. And yourself, that I. So that is Chit. And the nature of that experience of self is Satchidananda. Ananda. Satchidananda is the nature of the self, and that is only truth. What is the other question? So normally, when they ask who is the self, people say brain and neurons. That is not true, because brain and neurons are also thoughts. They are in the waking state observation. We are talking of the awareness itself, the observer himself. Who is it? What is its nature? When the observer gets thoughts, those thoughts become certain objects, and those objects are you are seeing as brain and neurons. So they are all, everything is a thought. You can stay without thoughts also. That means truth is not with thoughts only. There is something without thoughts also. In deep sleep also there is no thought. And in deep meditation also there is no thought. You can stop thoughts and you can exist without thoughts. That means you are there, which is pure consciousness. Yes, anybody else? Anything else?
I have a
Feel
question.
free. Yes.
Um, we say there's heaven and hell in this world, but then people do suffer in their lifetime. Uh, then what is hell meant for? If we already, as human beings, we do have sufferings and we have pleasure, sufferings, everything in this lifetime. So what is this hell especially again meant for?
Yes. After death and before acquiring new life, there's an intermediate gap. Do you realize that?
Yes.
During the gap, you can have bad experiences of various kinds, which is called hell, or you can have good experiences which of various kinds, which is called heaven. So the soul goes through that intermediate stage, and apart from whatever it has experienced in this life, it has experienced hellish problems and has also experienced heavenly pleasures and comforts and luxuries, enjoyments, both in this life. That is separate. So as per the Garuda Purana, when the person dies, his soul goes for 1 year traveling to Yamaloka. And after 1 year, it reaches the destination where there is a ready data bank of your karma, your sins committed and punya karma committed. So 50% of each will be kept aside and remaining 50% will be spent there. That means 50% of your sins will be punished for you by in terms of suffering in your subtle body, not in this physical body, dead and gone, burnt here. You have a separate body there. Then after 50% of your punya karma is taken as enjoyment in heavenly life. And after finishing both, whatever balance is there, if both are equal, punya and papa are equal, you'll be born again as a human being. If your papa is punya.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question? But we are now talking the whole purpose of yoga and Vedanta is to overcome this birth and death cycle and rebirth cycle, because you'll be reborn again and again, the same story will start. Again, all these problems will start. Again, for a long life, whatever you've gone through this life, same thing will happen there, or maybe worse, or maybe better, depending on your past karma. And again, there is no point, because we better to have no birth at all, freedom. So moksha, that is possible by self-realization. As you are God, God has no birth, God has no death, God has no sin, God has no good and bad. So when you realize that you are God, then you are liberated. Actually, you are God. But so happens that you forgot that you are God and you are thinking you are man and you are having so many problems. So all that we are trying to convey in the entire Upanishads and the practice of yoga at various levels is to make you realize that you are God, which you are already originally. So I wish you all the best. I wish you all will get the realization and you all get enlightened as soon as possible.
Thank
Okay,
you.
then all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.